What's up, guys? Welcome back to Unbound Vision. I'm here today with Jairus. We are on our ferry over to Victoria on our BC trip, and we rented the Canon RF 70-200 2.8, and Jairus has his
70-200, yeah.
70-200. You can talk
F4 though, so not as nice.
Yeah, but it is an F4. But we thought it would be cool to compare these lenses since we're out here anyway, and we have two of them. And we want to see, is this really worth the $3,700 it's worth in Canada? So we're gonna take some photos for a little while and then compare them later. Big difference is this is a tromboning lens, where yours is not.
Mine is just set, so whether it's at 200 or 70, it's still the same.
Yeah.
It's a lot longer, a lot thinner though as well. I think preference-wise, if I was to pack something, definitely already advantage goes to the RF 2.8.
100%.
This, I feel like is probably a little bit lighter on its own, but just having the capabilities of not having to use an adapter is obviously like super key as well. So first impression, advantage Canon 2.8.
Another advantage of this is that this does have the internal image stabilization, where yours does not. I do think it would make a difference if this was the 2.8 version, maybe.
Yeah, the 2.8 version does have image stabilizer, whereas this one doesn't. So you have to have a pretty high shutter speed when you're using this one, just to compensate for the lack of image stabilization.
But this is a good way for you to figure out if it's really worth it to get the really expensive one versus the consumer version that's a little easier to have access to.
Yeah,
so
I think this is like $700
versus
like that. $3,700.
So save yourself $3,000 with this
Save
one.
yourself $3,000.
We'll find out. Let's do it. Let's take some photos.
Let's go. I'm getting a shot of Sean right now. He's got the 100 to 400 on the other side. I think he's taking a picture of this like little boat, but I don't really know. And there's like a ton of mountains in the background, so he stands out with his red jacket. Looks really good. He just saw me. Code red. Code red, he just saw me. All right, let's join Nick on the other side. He might be getting some shots that I'm not getting, so I kind of want to get the same. So looking over here.
Pretty good, that boat.
You got a good couple shots of that or what?
I did. This boat right here too. Let's both get that one. So we can compare this one.
And at 200 mil?
Yeah, straight 200 mil. I'm shooting ISO 125. Oh, actually, I'll bring that down to 100. F6 1/500.
Hello, I am not on a boat anymore. Surprise, surprise. So, I'm back in my office. It's back from BC, obviously, and finally had the opportunity to sit down and actually look at some photos, review some footage, and I have to say, all of it is just so good. So this part of the video is just literally me wrapping up the 70-200 comparison. We got kicked off of the ferry because we were docking, so we needed to get back to the car and make sure that everything was okay. So we got kicked off the ferry deck on the top level there prior to being able to wrap up the video. But today I want to go over and the comparison, like actually compare the photos from the 70-200 2.8 RF and the 70-200 f4 EF with no image stabilizer. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to jump in and find a couple of photos from Nick's, find a couple of photos from mine, and we're going to compare the two of them, see if we notice really a difference in image quality or anything like that. So, but let's jump into the first one. So right off of the bat, this image, I don't really see anywhere that that you would be able to notice whether it would be the EF or the RF lens. I really think that the RF lens gives, obviously because it's the native mount to the R6, which is the camera we were both using, but it just gives a little bit more sharpness overall to the image, which obviously is really, really great when you're shooting in scenarios at a longer focal length. But again, in these two images, not really much of a comparison, can't really see too much of a difference. So on to the next one. So for this photo, Nick and I were lined up side by side. We were matching the camera settings. We were lined up perfectly on the exact same boat. He chose to frame the boat dead center, where I chose to give the image a little bit more scale. But you can already see in the foreground of Nick's images the detail in the water, and then the boat itself as well. Like the sharpness on the boat is really, really strong. Whereas mine, I feel like comes in a little flat and not as sharp. Not too much of a difference, but obviously because we shot at different focal lengths, you're probably going to pick up on some subtleties that might indicate EF versus RF. The one thing that I will point out about these photos is that I wouldn't say Nick necessarily had an advantage shooting at 2.8, because in this scenario, when we're taking landscape photos, you mostly want to stick at a higher aperture. I think in some cases we were shooting f8 to f9. In this scenario, when we were on a ferry and we were taking landscape shots, it didn't really matter that Nick had a 2.8 and I only had an f4. The next photo that I want to compare is the shot that Nick and I took of Sean. So the one thing that does stand out to me overall from these two images is the actual sharpness. You can see that one definitely has more sharpness than the other. That sharpness that comes out of the EF lens isn't as great as the RF in this scenario, because the image actually looks like you took a clarity slider and just pumped up the clarity, whereas the EF doesn't take that sharpness straight out of camera. It looks like it needs a little bit of clarity to get there. I personally prefer to have a little bit more softness in some of these photos, especially if it's a portrait, but obviously every photographer has their own style, their own preference as well. So everything here is obviously completely subjective. Overall, awesome experience taking the ferry over from Vancouver to Victoria and being able to actually compare two very similar lenses. You're probably wondering, Jairus, which one should I get? Just tell me which one should I get. And I will be completely honest with you. It really depends. It really depends on your situation. You know, you could be saving, if you're shooting already on an R series camera, a mirrorless camera in the Canon series, and you're looking at getting the RF, but you see the price tag on it and you see that it's $3,400, and you just say to yourself, I really can't afford that right now. Whereas the EF lens, the f4, no image stabilization, it is what it is. You know what you're getting with that. I mean, you know what you're getting with the RF as well, but you know, the cheaper price tag obviously on the EF is definitely some incentive to get it if you're looking at a 70 to 200 in the near future. On the other hand, you have the RF lens where, you know, it's a 2.8, it has image stabilization, it's a tromboning lens, so it's easy and compact to fit in your camera bag. A bit thick, really wide in my opinion. Obviously, if you have the tripod collar on there and if you have the lens hood, it really starts to take up a lot of space. Honestly, in terms of weight, I feel like they're about the same. I didn't really notice too much of a difference between the two of them. Overall, again, it just really depends on what you're looking for. I highly suggest that you either rent or if you have a friend that has, you know, an RF or an EF 70 to 200 and you're looking to try out something in that range, that you definitely rent it or you borrow before you actually go to buy something. And that's really some of the best advice that I've had along the way as well, is why not rent something and try it out before you actually commit to buying it. So that's it for me, guys. If you're really looking on trying to find which lens to buy, why not rent it first? If there's anything that you guys want to see in the future, comment down below and let us know. But that's it for me. Take care. Have a good one.
I'm going over here. Over here. So you should probably join us.